That little woman with you, is she your maid? The laughter exploded across the nightclub like breaking glass. 5 men, big men, built like the 1970s understood, chunky muscle, working-class swagger, and the kind of confidence that comes from never being challenged. The ringleader, a dock worker named Vincent Chen with scarred knuckles and a scar that split his left eyebrow, leaned over the bar. His voice dripped with deliberate cruelty. They didn't know who she was. They definitely didn't know who was standing 15 feet behind them. San Francisco, October 1970. The city was changing. Hippies had shifted into something harder. There was still violence in the streets, but it was organized now. Gangs had territories, nightclubs had hierarchies, and in the Chinese district, certain men had decided they still ruled. Bruce Lee sat at a small table with his wife Linda in a dimly lit bar called the Golden Phoenix. It wasn't fancy. Red vinyl booths, flickering neon, a bartender who never looked up. But it was their place. Quiet enough to talk, tucked away enough to breathe. Linda wore a simple cream dress. Her hair fell past her shoulders. She was beautiful in the way that mattered. Not the kind you screamed about, but the kind you noticed when no one was looking. She was talking about her day, about the neighborhood kids who'd learned some of her moves. Bruce was listening, really listening. His hand rested on the table near hers. They weren't loud. They weren't drawing attention. The 5 men at the bar were a different story entirely. Vincent Chen was the loudest, the kind of loud that fills a room and demands you acknowledge his existence. He worked nights at the docks, unionized, protected. He'd won 3 fights in bars that people still talked about, always against men smaller than him, always when his friends were watching. He'd cultivated a reputation that worked in a 3-block radius. His friend Marcus kept laughing too hard, the kind of performance laughter that meant he was nervous and hiding it. The other 3 were quiet, construction workers, older, the type who didn't start things but wouldn't stop them either. They'd been drinking since 7 p.m. It was now 11. They were looking for something to happen. Bruce Lee was the opposite of loud. Even sitting still, he possessed a kind of presence. It wasn't aggressive, it was complete, like he occupied the full space of his body, every muscle in conversation with every other muscle, even at rest. His eyes moved, not constantly scanning for threats, but genuinely observing, present. He wore a dark shirt, simple, expensive watch, no jewelry besides his wedding ring. He didn't need ornament. When Vincent laughed, Bruce still didn't turn around. When the insult about Linda came, Bruce still didn't turn around. Linda's face tightened. She knew who she was, but public humiliation works differently. It's not about what the victim knows, it's about the audience. It's about being made small in front of strangers. She put down her drink. Her hands moved to her lap. "Don't," Bruce said quietly. His hand found hers beneath the table. "They're—" Linda started. "I know what they are." Bruce's voice was flat, clinical, the way you might identify a cloud formation. "Let them have this moment. They won't get another one." He wasn't being casual about this. His jaw was set. His breathing had shifted, slower, deeper, like a martial artist entering meditation. But there was no fear, and there was no immediate action. There was calculation. The 5 men kept laughing. They ordered another round. Vincent made another joke, something about how Bruce must have paid her to sit with him. The language was coarse, deliberate, designed to sting. The bartender pretended not to hear. The few other patrons studied their drinks with sudden fascination. What the 5 men didn't understand is this: every humiliation has a price. Bruce had been dealing with racism his entire life. In Hong Kong, they said he was too American. In California, they said he was too foreign. He'd fought white men who tried to prove Asians were weak. He'd sparred with local fighters who wanted to test themselves against the new kid, the skinny kid from overseas who moved like he had too many joints. He'd never lost, not one time. But Bruce wasn't thinking about winning right now. He was thinking about his wife. He was thinking about the moment she had stopped being present in the room with him and become an object in someone else's story. Vincent ordered a 3rd round. He was getting bolder now, feeding off the chemistry of his friend's nervous laughter. "I bet she doesn't even speak English," one of the construction workers said. His voice was mean in a tired way, like meanness was just something they did here, like it was the weather. "She speaks perfectly," another said, almost gently, and that was somehow worse, because it acknowledged Linda's humanity while still participating in the degradation. Linda's grip on Bruce's hand tightened. Bruce stood up. He didn't stand up fast or dramatically. He simply unfolded from his chair like a man who'd finished his drink and was ready to leave. He placed his free hand on the table. He looked at Linda. "Let's go," he said. But Vincent saw the movement, and Vincent was not a man who let opportunities pass. "Leaving?" Vincent's voice was loud enough to turn heads. "I was just getting started." Bruce paused. He turned slowly. For the first time, he made direct eye contact with the man at the bar. Vincent was a head taller, maybe 60 pounds heavier. His shoulders were the width of a door frame. His hands could crush cans. He had the kind of mass that worked in his favor in every situation except this one, except in this exact moment, except against this exact man. But Vincent didn't know that yet. What Vincent knew was he was bigger. He was in his territory. His friends were with him. The room had already made him the center of attention. In his world, those facts added up to power. "I wasn't talking to you," Vincent said. "I was talking to your wife, your maid, your—" Bruce raised his hand, not to attack, to stop. "Listen to me carefully," Bruce said. His accent was soft, his English precise. "You don't know me, and you don't know what you're doing right now. There's a path where this ends with all of us walking away. You choose that path, right now, or everything changes." It was almost kind, the way you might warn someone they're about to step off a cliff in the dark. The bar went completely silent. Even the music seemed to pause. Marcus, Vincent's best friend, suddenly developed a strong interest in his beer. The construction workers exchanged glances. The bartender's hand stopped mid-wipe of a glass. Everyone in that bar understood they were witnessing a threshold moment. Vincent laughed. It was a nervous laugh trying to disguise itself as confidence, but it was wrong. Everything about his posture was wrong. His body had sensed the truth before his mind caught up. He was facing something he'd never actually encountered before. A man who was not afraid of him. Not defiant, not trying to act brave. Simply not afraid. "You threatening me?" Vincent stood up from his bar stool. He was trying to reclaim narrative control. "In front of all these people?" "No," Bruce said. "I'm offering you a gift. The gift of walking out of this moment exactly as you walked in. Bruised ego. That's all. That's mercy." The bartender set down the glass. His eyes were clear now. He was watching, really watching. A couple at a corner booth leaned into each other. They suddenly had no desire to leave. An older man near the window, someone who'd been reading a newspaper, folded it and turned his full attention to the scene. This was the moment that would spawn stories, the moment everyone would remember, the exact second before consequences became real. Vincent's friends were stock still. The quiet construction workers had become statues. Linda was the only one still moving. She had stood up. She had her purse. She was looking at Bruce, trying to communicate something wordlessly. "Let's go. Just leave." But Bruce knew something Linda didn't. Knowing could not be unsaid. Once Vincent had done what he'd done, once he'd crossed that line, there was only one ending. Leaving would be worse. Leaving would cement the narrative that he was afraid. And more than his pride, Bruce's whole philosophy rested on this. A man must be responsible for his actions. Not tomorrow, not later, now. "Last chance," Bruce said. Vincent threw a punch. It was a roundhouse, slow, telegraphed, desperation trying to hide in speed. He was going for the face, hoping to land something that would change the entire dynamic. The first strike that lands is the one that counts. Everyone knows this. Except for Bruce. The punch moved through the space where Bruce's head had been. Except Bruce's head wasn't there anymore. It was a technique so fundamental it was almost invisible. A small pivot, a minimal head movement, the kind of thing that takes years to develop the reflexes for. Vincent's fist cut air so close Bruce could have felt the heat, but physics won.
His head was no longer in the equation. Vincent's momentum carried his body forward, his arm extended. He was completely open. And that was when the entire bar understood that this would not be a fight. This would be a demonstration.
What happened next took 3.2 seconds, but it didn't feel like time moving, it felt like time stopping. Vincent's arm was extended, his body was committed, his weight was forward. In boxing terms, he was vulnerable. In martial arts terms, he was finished. He just didn't know it yet. Bruce didn't telegraph anything. There was no wind-up, no shift in stance, no muscular tension that preceded movement. His body simply responded, the way water responds to a dropped stone. His left hand came up. Not a punch, a palm strike. Open hand, the heel of his palm aimed at Vincent's solar plexus, the center mass, the engine of everything, breathing, strength, the ability to continue existing in this moment. Bruce's entire body was behind it, his feet, his hips, his core. Years of training compressed into a single point of contact. It was economical, perfect, like watching a mathematician solve an equation. The impact happened. It was quieter than anyone expected. No explosion of sound, no dramatic crash, just a thump, a sound like dropping a watermelon on concrete. Clean, final. Vincent's body went backward, not dramatically, not like in movies, but with the absolute authority of physics. His feet left the ground, his arms windmilled, the air left his lungs. He crashed into the bar, his ribs hitting the edge, and then he was sliding, his body unable to stop its momentum until he crumpled against the far wall where the neon beer signs cast everything in crimson. The entire sequence lasted 3 seconds. The silence lasted forever. No one moved. No one breathed. The bartender stood completely still, a towel frozen in his hands, his eyes wider than they'd been in 20 years. The couple in the corner booth had their hands clasped together. The woman's mouth was open. The man was staring at Bruce like he was watching a ghost materialize in front of him. The older man with the newspaper had stood up. He was older, maybe 70, and his expression was something between recognition and disbelief. His lips moved soundlessly. Marcus, Vincent's best friend, was white, actually pale. His drink was halfway to his mouth, but he seemed to have forgotten it existed. His eyes kept moving from Bruce to Vincent and back again, as if the universe might have changed in between. The 3 construction workers had their heads down. Not from respect, from the bone-deep knowledge that they were in the presence of something they didn't have words for. Linda was looking at Bruce. Bruce was looking at Vincent. Vincent was looking at nothing. He was on his back, gasping for air like a fish thrown on shore. His ribs were screaming. His nervous system was rebooting. His friends knew better than to help him. They knew this wasn't over. "Get up," Bruce said. His voice was quiet, not menacing, just factual, an observation. Vincent couldn't get up. The air had left his body, and his nervous system was rebooting. His friends knew better than to help him. They knew this wasn't over. "Get up," Bruce said again. Same tone, same clarity. This time, Vincent understood. He understood that Bruce could have done worse, much worse. He understood that Bruce had shown restraint. He understood that the next time might not feature that restraint. Vincent rolled onto his side. He gasped. He tried to breathe. His face was red, not from anger, but from the pure physical trauma of impact. It took him 40 seconds to get to his feet. When he did, he was bent over, one hand on his ribs, the other on the bar for support. He couldn't straighten up. He couldn't look at Bruce. He could only stand there, broken, understanding that everything he thought he was had been demolished by a man half his weight. "Don't ever speak to her again," Bruce said. "Don't look at her. Don't think about her. You understand me?" Vincent nodded. He couldn't do anything else. "Now leave." Vincent moved towards the door like a man in deep water, slow, difficult. His friends followed, not looking at Bruce, not looking at each other, just moving towards the exit like they'd been released from a spell. Marcus lingered for a moment.
His eyes met Bruce's for maybe a second. In that second, something passed between them. Recognition. Marcus had seen something that very few men would ever see. He understood the line between confidence and power, between strength and skill, between size and speed. He left without saying anything. The 5 men disappeared into the San Francisco night. The bar remained silent for another 10 seconds. Then, as if a spell had broken, people started moving again. Conversations resumed. The bartender picked up his towel. The couple at the corner booth leaned in and started whispering furiously. But everyone in that bar knew. They knew they had witnessed something that transcended normal violence. Not a fight, not a brawl, a demonstration, a master showing his work. Bruce returned to his table. He sat down. He took Linda's hand. His breathing was completely normal. His heart rate hadn't elevated. He was exactly as he'd been before, completely present, completely calm. "Are you okay?" Linda asked. "Yeah," he said, "but let's go." They left money on the table. They stood up. They walked towards the door. As they passed the older man, the one with the newspaper, he nodded, just a small nod, a gesture of respect. Bruce nodded back. Then they were gone. What happened next is what always happens. The story changed.
Because the truth was, a smaller man using technique and speed and absolute mastery of his body had dismantled a larger man's entire world view in 3 seconds. No supernatural powers, no magic, just skill. Pure, devastating skill. Vincent never went back to the Golden Phoenix. He never talked about the incident except once to Marcus, and only to say, "Don't ever test someone you don't know." The construction workers who'd been there that night would mention it for years, always in the same way, always with the same sense of awe. They'd been present for a threshold moment. They'd seen something that changed how they understood human capability. The bartender would mention it to other bartenders. The couple from the corner booth would tell the story at dinner parties for decades. The older man with the newspaper, his name was Robert, would eventually tell his grandson that he'd seen Bruce Lee once and that his entire understanding of martial arts had changed in that moment. But here's what made this confrontation legendary. Not the power, but what it represented. Bruce Lee was fighting a war on 2 fronts. The first front was external. He was fighting against a culture that believed size determined outcome, that bigger muscles meant more strength, that a 300-pound man would always beat a 135-pound man, regardless of skill, that martial arts were either mystical Eastern nonsense or brute force physical dominance. The second front was internal. He was fighting against the limitations that people, including himself, placed on what a human body could achieve. Everything Bruce did was an answer to these wars. When he moved that way, when he generated that much power from such minimal motion, he was proving something that most people couldn't comprehend. He was proving that efficiency beats size, that speed beats strength, that understanding your body's mechanics beats raw physical mass. Vincent Chen represented the old world, the world where might made right, where size was destiny, where a bigger man always won because bigger men had always won. Bruce Lee represented something different, a revolution, really. He was showing that a person, any person, could transcend their limitations through perfect technique, absolute precision, and the willingness to understand their body as an instrument rather than just a collection of muscles. This wasn't arrogance. This was philosophy made physical. When Bruce didn't immediately destroy Vincent, when he gave him chances to back away, he wasn't being merciful out of kindness. He was being merciful because he understood that violence wasn't about winning, it was about teaching. And the most powerful teaching happens when the person being taught has no choice but to accept the lesson. What most people don't understand is this. The legend of that night spread far beyond San Francisco. Within 2 years, every martial arts school in the Bay Area knew the story. By 1975, it had reached Hong Kong, Los Angeles, and New York. Fighters who'd never met Bruce Lee had heard about the man who could defeat 5 opponents in seconds, about the master who moved so fast he was invisible. Some of the details were true, some were mythology. But the core truth, that a smaller, faster, more technically skilled opponent could dominate a larger, stronger, slower one, that truth became the foundation of modern martial arts. Because of that night, because of one 3.2-second demonstration. Thousands of young men and women who heard the story decided to learn martial arts, not to become fighters, but to understand what Bruce Lee had understood, that the limitations they believed defined them were illusions, that through dedication and proper training they could transcend their constraints. That was the real victory that night. Not Vincent on his back, gasping for air, not the 5 men leaving with their tails between their legs. The real victory was philosophical. It was the moment when the old world of size-based dominance collided with a new world of speed, precision, and intellectual understanding of combat. And in that collision, a legend was born. Not the legend of an invincible fighter, but the legend of a teacher who could show you in 3.2 seconds that everything you thought you understood about power was wrong. Only 11 people witnessed it. The bartender, the couple in the corner, the 3 construction workers, Marcus and his 2 friends, Robert with the newspaper, Bruce, Linda. 11 people. Most of them are dead now, but the story survived. It survived because it represented something true about human potential, something about what becomes possible when you stop believing in your limitations and start believing in your training. Something about how a person's true power isn't measured in pounds or inches, but in clarity of purpose and mastery of self. That night at the Golden Phoenix, Bruce Lee didn't just defeat 5 men. He defeated every person who would ever believe that size determines destiny. He taught everyone watching and everyone who would hear the story that the body can transcend what the mind thinks is possible, that skill beats strength, that speed beats size, that a focused, trained, enlightened human being is more powerful than raw physical force. That was the legend. That was why it mattered. That was why it still matters now. If you want to hear more stories about the moments that shaped history, about the confrontations that changed how we understand human potential, about the legends that walked among us, subscribe to this channel. Because these are the stories that deserve to be told. These are the moments that remind us there are no limits except the ones we accept. Subscribe, because legends never die. They just wait to be remembered.